That was Alive City, Back in Time. You're on 94.9 this afternoon. It is 4:15 and we have Dr. Taz Walker from Creation Ministries International on the line. Good afternoon, Dr. Taz.
Good afternoon, Mick. It's good to be with you again. It's been a while, but it's great.
It has been a little while, and it's awesome to have you back on the line again as well. Of course, Dr. Taz from Creation Ministries International is happy to answer any questions you might have. If you have any questions, please just text them through to our text line, SMS 0401 949 949. Now, Dr. Taz, before we even get started today, I was sort of just on the Creation Ministries website and I saw your name and I thought, I'll click on there and check it out. And there was a link on there that then went to Taz Walker's Biblical Geology website, which is actually called biblicalgeology.net. And wow, there's a lot of information on there as well. And that's just linked off the Creation Ministries site. Well, how long have you had that one going?
It's been going for quite a while. I've been too busy to update it much now, but I set it up just to get the information out there. I was very excited and still am very excited about biblical geology, and I'd research stuff and put it up on the internet and that sort of thing. And it still is very popular. Like there's a lot of people connecting in with it every day to just check things out. But I sort of think, oh man, I'd like a bit more time to be able to put some more stuff up on it. But anyway, it's been really good.
Yeah, well, I was amazed at it. I started reading it and I realised that there's a lot of info there. You've spent a lot of time and you've put a lot of stuff on there on biblicalgeology.net. And I was blown away. It's got this little so what thing. Geology is not just about mines, minerals and museums. Your attitude to geology affects your family, your quality of life, your self-image, your future. See why? And I thought, oh, yeah. Well, you might be able to give us a real brief. Why?
Yeah, well, geology is one of the early sciences that brought in this evolutionary philosophy. You see, science is about observing things, and science has done amazing stuff. But with geology, the problem is you can look at the rocks, you can make the observations, you can do the analysis and all that of the rocks in the field. But the question is, how did they get there? And that's the number one question, the $64,000 question, as I used to say. And of course, if you can start with the Bible, and that's what the early geologists did. They started with the Bible and used that as their way of understanding how the rocks got there. But then there was a new philosophy came in, a couple hundred years ago now, and the idea is that you don't start with the Bible. What we do is we look at what's happening now and assume it's always been like that in the past. So that's where the idea of millions of years comes from that philosophy, which is very interesting. I once saw a joke about this where a guy was looking under a street light, looking around, and a guy came along and says, "What are you looking for?" He says, I lost my watch under here. I lost my watch. I'm looking for my watch." So they start looking around. He starts helping him looking around. He says, "So where did you drop it?" He says, "Over there." He says, "Well, why aren't you looking over there?" He says, "Well, it's dark over there. I'm looking in here where there's light." And it's a bit like that with the geology. So why do you assume that? Because otherwise you're just guessing. And so that's the thing. And geology's affected a lot of things. It affects, people's attitude to the Bible, and millions of years sort of have affected, well, where did I come from? I evolved. What's my purpose? Well, it just happened. There's no purpose to it. And the universe doesn't even care that you exist. It's blind, pitiless indifference, as one very famous atheist said. And so that's, and a lot of people, they get sort of depressed. They feel there's no purpose to life because they don't really know why. It's just a feeling that they have. They don't know what it is. And it's because they have got no purpose, because they believe what the culture says about millions of years, how everything happened over millions of years, and it doesn't seem to be any purpose behind it.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, if anyone wants to read through that website, biblicalgeology.net. But you can just go to the creation website, creation.com, and if you find Dr. Taz Walker, well, you can click through. There's a link that takes you through to it there as well. So we always talk about how many, huge number of pages on the creation site. Well, now that I know that it links here, there's even more.
There's even more. That's right. And that's what got me started. I sort of, years ago, I used to read Creation magazine and get creation stuff, but I couldn't figure out where Noah's flood fitted into the geologic column. They'd often had pictures of the geologic column in their publications, and I could never figure it out. And so basically, I remember sort of thinking to myself, well, if the Bible's really true, if there was a creation and there was a flood, what would you expect to see? And so it was very simple. I worked out this geological model, biblical geological model, and I published on it, and that's what got me started. Really what happened was, as a guy, I worked in the electricity industry, and I showed him what I wrote, the paper that I wrote, and he says, that's interesting. He says, but no one will take any notice of you. I said, why is that? He says, you haven't got a geology degree. I said, okay. He says, but you could get one. Yeah, it'd be easy. You could do it part-time after, out of hours. And so he is a guy, he wasn't a Christian, but he motivated me to go back and study geology, and that's set me on my way to where I am now. It's amazing. It's amazing how it all works.
When you say geology, was that the you majored in earth science? That was in a Bachelor of Science? Yep.
Earth science is geology, so it covers more than geology. It covers lots of things. It covers the shape of the earth, that's geomorphology, and the mineralogy in the earth. There's a lot of things that it covers. So it's just an all-encompassing thing is called earth science.
Oh, well, yeah, we thank God that you did it, because now with your wealth of knowledge, there's so much that you've been teaching us over the last year or so. And I believe today you're going to be speaking about a frozen Eskimo.
A frozen Eskimo, Glacier Girl. It's not an Eskimo. Glacier Girl's an aeroplane.
Oh, okay, and, there you go.
Glacier Girl is an aeroplane. It's a nice name for an aeroplane. Yes. And it crashed in Greenland in 1942 during the war. So, and they got caught in. There was a whole a host of planes. It was called a squadron of planes, and there were these P-38 Lightning fighters, about 6 of them, and there were these giant B-17 bombers, and they all got ditched in Greenland. And anyway, and they all got rescued. All the people got rescued, but they left the planes on in the snow there. And anyway, there's one enterprising guy. His name was Patrick Epps, and he was an American U.S. airplane dealer.
Yep.
And so he thought, and he had his mate Richard Taylor. They thought, why don't we go and get those planes back? They just left them in Greenland on the ice. Well, let's go and find them. And so they went to look for them, and they spent 12 years looking for them.
Wow.
And it was quite amazing. They thought it'd just have a little bit of snow and ice on them, but they eventually found them. They had to use sonar going down under the snow, and they found these planes.
Were they definitely in the right spot to begin with?
No. The right spot what?
Were they in the right spot to begin with when they were looking?
No, they weren't. They'd moved. They'd moved about 1.5 kilometres from where they were. And so the ice had moved, and also they were 75 kilometres under the ice, 75 kilometres. And they had no idea that much ice could accumulate in just that short amount of time. It was.
You mean 75 metres?
75, no, yeah, not kilometres. That was a good pickup.
I would have thought that's a long way down.
That's a lot of ice. Yes. 75 metres, very good. And,
but that's still a lot of ice, 75 metres.
75. So then they had to figure out how to retrieve them, and they used hot water in copper tubes, and they sort of went down through the ice. The 75 was 80 metres by the time they got down there. And and they retrieved them, and actually Glacier Girl was broken, and they ended up putting it back together, and it eventually flew. They actually flew this thing.
Wow.
But the point is that it shows that how quickly ice accumulates. And when they drill these ice cores down, they drilled ice cores down through the ice. The scientists have done it, and they've gone down 3,000 meters, which is 3 kilometers. They went down 3,000 meters to bedrock, and they're saying that it's 110,000 years down the bottom. But when you work out from Glacier Girl, you realise that this, that whole amount could have been accumulated in just a couple of thousand years.
Yeah.
And so it's really quite a dramatic indication that these ice cores is not as old as, you read about in the newspaper, that sort of thing.
Wow, that's Greenland. Yeah, I didn't even know the ice was that deep in Greenland.
3 kilometres in Greenland, that's right.
Wow.
And it accumulated after Noah's flood. See, Noah's flood produced the conditions. It warmed the waters of the oceans, and the warmer waters means there's a lot more evaporation, there's a lot more rainfall, not a lot more snow. And so after the flood, for hundreds of years, the ice accumulated very rapidly. And when they sort of drill these cores down, they don't recognize that it accumulated so rapidly. And so they're counting up, 110,000 years, which is just bizarre in a way. And people see that, and so they just sort of think, oh, the Bible can't be true. Somebody said it created in 6,000 years. That's ridiculous. And but it's based on these false ideas.
Well, I've just had a question come through, and it says, how many years after Glacier Girl crashed did they recover the plane?
Well, it was crashed in 1942, and it was recovered. When was it recovered? 1992. They brought it to the surface in 1992. So it was about 42, 50, 60, 70, 80, 50 years. 50 years. So that's how long it was. And so you work out that 80 meters in 50 years. You can work out the ice is accumulating very rapidly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's 160 metres in just 100 years, which would put it a few Ks down if it was over a couple of thousand years. Yes.
That's right.
And if what you were saying is correct, which I'm sure it is, there was so much more evaporation going back a few thousand years. Well, wow, it really fits that model well. That's absolutely incredible. Look, we're going to have to go into a little break right now. Now, we are with Dr. Taz Walker from Creation Ministries International. Please feel free to send any questions you have through to our text line, 0401 949 949. You're on 94.9. It is 23 minutes to 5, and we have Dr. Taz Walker on the line, who's been talking to us about an aeroplane, or a bunch of aeroplanes, but one in particular called Glacier Girl that crashed in Greenland. And when they went back 50 years later to recover the plane, it was 75 metres under the ice. That's remarkable. And as you mentioned, they do core samples and they say, oh, yeah, this is sort of, so many thousands and thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of years old. And, of course, well, you claim we've got a world that's only 6,000 years old, and it was about 4,500 years from the flood. And so all this ice has built up pretty much since then. And seeing this plane 75 metres under the ice, one of our listeners just sent through that's about 1.5 metres per year. And we also got a comment that said not a lot per year, but it all adds up, eh?
That's right. When you got thousands of years, and it's as you say, it's 4,500 years since the flood. So in 1,500 metres in 1 year, it's 3,000 metres in 2. So that's the sort of scale that we're talking about. So it's ample, it's easily to account for that since Noah's flood. And the people have got a problem who sort of say it's 110,000 years old. Where they're putting all the layers, and that's part of the problem. Is they've got a model that they use for how the ice moves over millions of years. So they've got this model, which is a computer model, and so based on that, they work out where what the age should be of the ice, and so they go looking for that age in the ice core. And they get the answer that they started with, which is, 110,000. It's actually worse in the Antarctic, they're looking at not just 110, but sort of 600,000, 800,000 years in Antarctica. And people think that they count layers. They think that they look at the ice cores. It's a hole. It's like a cylinder, a long cylinder they drill into the ice, and they think they can just look at the layers and count the layers, but they don't do that at all. In Antarctica, the ice accumulation is such that they doesn't have layers, so they can't count the layers. So they use other ways of sort of coming up to be able to produce a number. And good old faithful, it's a big name, Milankovitch cycles. They use that to be able to sort of try to figure out, what possible age it is, and that's where they get the 800,000 years
What
from.
Milankovitch cycles?
Well, it's a guy called Milankovitch. I think he was Serbian, and he was trying to figure out how you could form ice. What would create an ice age? And people think, the Earth must have been cooler. How would the Earth be cooler? And they had all sorts of ideas, and he came up with the idea that the Earth's orbit is changing. Mm-hmm. So the orbit changes every 100,000 years, and the tilt of the axis changes every 25,000 years or something like that. And he worked out all these cycles of how the ice would build up and how it would retreat and that sort of thing. So that's why they talk about thousands of ice ages. But in actual fact, the Earth's not 25,000, 100,000 years old. And all these layers formed rapidly as the ice was deposited, maybe during storms. There were lots of storms and that, which caused it. And as a result of that, you can sort of work out that the ice cores are not that sort of age, not 800,000, but they fit in very nicely with the age, which is about 4,500 years back to bedrock.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting little and there's articles on creation.com, the website creation.com, about that. You look up ice cores, and it's actually got a picture of Glacier Girl on there.
Okay.
And it's actually got a picture on the flying, I think.
Oh, wow.
So it's a really attractive plane. These P-38 Lightning fighters, they're pretty cool. They're pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I know that when you say it was found quite away from where they originally thought it was, I understand how ice moves. I've seen ice move. I was a snow reporter for a while. I understand how ice can move down a hill, and
right.
the ice sheets can move. It's kind of remarkable. However, something that lands on top of the ice, particularly something like an aeroplane with wide wings, they literally keep it fairly buoyant.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand how heat, particularly when there's only maybe a few sort of meters on top of the wings, the heat from the sunlight could, heat the metal and it could cause it to melt in a tiny bit, but it doesn't have to go very far under ice before it loses that heat. It loses that ability to absorb a lot more heat because the ice itself blocks out the light, in which case the only way it could drop is by snow layers and snowfall, and apparently you can get layers building up. They call it horse snow. That's where the ice crystals build from the bottom upwards, which sounds a little crazy, but you do see it quite often, even in Australia. But those layers will build up, 75 metres. Yeah, it's incredible, and the fact that they can say, the thousands of metres or the few thousand metres that they've got in the Arctic or the Antarctic certainly can't be more than only a few thousand years old. It just doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. So where did you do your snow reporting and that sort of thing?
Oh, my snow reporting was down in the New South Wales Snowy Mountains. I did.
Oh, really? Okay. And did you ski? Did you do a lot of skiing?
Yeah, I was a ski schooler as well. Yeah, I taught people how to ski, but yeah, I loved the snow reporting. I used to report on all the resorts, including the Victorian resorts, but I did it from the New South Wales resorts. But I know a bit about ice and snow.
Cool. That's really good. Okay, I should send you a copy of the article or something like that on these ice cores. Yeah, they bore them down. It's about 5 inches in diameter is the core, and You can imagine 3,000 metres is the length, and so they cut them into about 1 metre length, and they then have to put them in some sort of protection, and then they have to put them in a freezer,
Yep.
so they keep them frozen, and then people, scientists drag them out and look at them, and of course, it's not easy recognising stuff when you're looking at a core. It's not like looking at it in the in the field, in the great big exposure of it. So core's only small. You don't really know what it is, a layer, whether it's just a block of ice or whether it's extensive. It's very interesting.
Yeah, look, I know you can't, you can't just count layers, because you can get one snowstorm that'll leave a layer. You can get a cold night with moisture in the air that'll cause horse snow that'll create a layer. You can get a single day where the temperature rises and drops a few times and get a few layers. There's no conformity to it. And so, by just counting layers, it's impossible. And that's why I'm still intrigued. I haven't yet heard of a theory that actually makes sense as to how they can date those layers. It sort of hasn't come to me yet.
Well, it's like you say. They might do counting of layers, but and as you say, you've got to decide: is this 1 year or is this 1 month, or what does this layer mean? And not only that, once you go down the 3,000 meters, once you go down to about 1,000 meters, the layers disappear. So you can't even count the layers, and so. When you go down about 1,000 meters, like the creation geologists, the creation scientists, they generally agree with what the secular scientists come up with, but it's below that where the secular scientists have a huge discrepancy from what the creation scientists have, and that's because they don't take account of the rapid build-up during the different environmental conditions after the flood, and so. And because they don't take account of that, they count far too many layers, or they assign far too many layers to it, and that's where they get the long ages from. And that's why people think the Bible can't be true, because they've made up these numbers, So it's a bit of an interesting situation.
And you're right saying they've made up those numbers, because it looks like it's all theory. There's no machine you can just put on it and it goes, oh, blip, 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 it is 2,000 years old. There isn't a machine to actually measure it. It's a bit like, all the other aging of rocks and that sort of thing. There's no actual machine. It's a theory, basically. And, we keep hearing it on TV. It's constantly, we're bombarded with these long ages, but they only come from someone's theory.
That's right. And the really big thing about it is one really big thing is that long ages. You've got fossils which are 10 million years old, 100 million years old. The dinosaurs 50 million years old, that sort of thing. And you've got these are dead animals, and there's cancers and carnivores and that sort of thing. And you look at that and you think, has the world always been like that?
Yeah.
And we say, no, it hasn't. The world that was God made was a good world, and there was no harm, there was no bloodshed, there was no violence, and God is a good God. It was because of man's sin that there was a curse. We put ourselves under a curse, and that's why the good news about the Bible is that this curse has been cancelled. Jesus put the curse on himself on the cross. So that's sort of how it all fits together. And that's why people get so passionate about this story. It brings out the truth and brings out liberation in people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, it's that time again. Dr. Taz Walker, we've got to say thank you for another awesome week, and look forward to you next time around.
Oh, indeed, Mike. Mick, it'd be really good. Looking forward to it so much. God bless you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.